Max Verstappen may have dominated the Canadian Grand Prix, but all the action behind the Dutchman certainly made up for the lack of action for the top spot of the podium. One person that may not have enjoyed the Canadian Grand Prix, however, was Lando Norris, with the young Brit at the wrong end of a baffling call by the stewards, with the McLaren driver fuming about it. In contrast, Lewis Hamilton was not only happy with P3, but also sent out a warning to the rest of Mercedes' rivals. But the real question is, why did Mercedes have to retire Russell's car? The answer is rather interesting. There is only really one word to describe the Canadian Grand Prix, and that's quality. Quality from Max Verstappen, quality from the rest of the field, and in particular, quality from Alex Albon. Max Verstappen may have dominated the race, but the real action was happening all behind the Dutchman. Okay, so maybe it wasn't all quality. As per normal, the FIA managed to land themselves in the limelight once again. This time they have managed to infuriate probably one of the nicest people on the grid in Lando Norris, and not only did they set Lando off, but also probably set off most of F1 Twitter by giving a grid place penalty to fan favorite Nico Hülkenberg as well. Ignoring the FIA, as hard as that seems to be nowadays, the Canadian Grand Prix was probably as good as it could have been, with Max Verstappen utterly dominant from start to finish, extending his lead on his teammate Sergio Perez to 69 points. Now, let's be honest, it's really what's happening behind Max that's keeping most of us interested in F1 at the moment, because no one's catching Max at this point. And at least at the moment, we have a Lewis versus Alonso battle happening, igniting a much-needed rivalry that is taking most of F1 fans to a simpler time. During the race, Hamilton had initially gotten ahead of Alonso off the start line. Still, the Spaniard reclaimed the second spot after a safety car period caused by George Russell hitting the wall. But after opening up a 5-second gap over his former teammate, a rear brake issue on Alonso's Aston Martin allowed Hamilton to close back within a touching distance with only 10 laps remaining. However, Alonso was able to see off the threat and push on in the final stages to seal his 6th podium of the season and 2nd runner-up spot. We were hoping to challenge a little more the Red Bull, but we lost pace at the start to Lewis, Alonso said. I didn't have one lap where I could relax even a little bit, so it was an amazing battle. It was tough, a very demanding race. All 70 laps of qualifying today. Red Bull's margin of victory was also the smallest it's been all season, with Alonso finishing only 9.5 seconds behind Verstappen. Yeah, only 9.5. This is still an almighty gap, but still much better than where we were earlier in the season. But according to Max, the Red Bull was struggling in Canada. Normally, we were very good on the tires, and I think that worked against us today. When it's very cold, you actually want the car to be a bit more aggressive on the tires. In the end, we still win by a lot of seconds, Max said when asked about the Red Bull's performance in Canada. That's quite a worrying statement from Max Verstappen, as there is a small glimmer of hope that the rest of the teams are catching up to the unstoppable RB19. Only time will tell if the other teams can catch Red Bull, but for now, we will not be holding our breath. Now, such is the dominance of Red Bull that, according to sources, the team is already starting to look at next year's car and what they're going to do with the next generation of Red Bull F1 cars. Mercedes have managed to find some pace and were pleasantly surprised with their podium finish in Canada. This is especially clear after spending the whole week bemoaning the fact that Canada was due to be one of the worst tracks on the F1 calendar for them. But the Mercedes team principal rather used this as an opportunity to show how far the team has come from the beginning of the year. Positive and encouraging trajectory. Our new car works well. We knew that Canada is one of the more difficult ones for us, and coming out in P3 a solid not too far away from Max. I think he backed off a little bit at the end, but much closer than we would have expected. At the beginning of the year, we would have been murdered on this kind of circuit, Wolff told Viaplay following the race. He was also asked about where Mercedes would have the best chance to win a race this season, to which he responded, Silverstone. Such was the optimism in Mercedes that Lewis Hamilton even had time to say that Mercedes is hoping to have a sick battle between Aston Martin and Red Bull. It's been great for us to be on the podium for 2 races in a row. It's really fantastic for us. We were also running 4th in Monaco, so we're definitely getting closer. It's going to be a battle of development, I guess, over the rest of the season. I'm just hoping at some stage we can have a little bit more level so we can get back to some of the good races we had in 2021. And to have all 3 of us in a super tight battle would be sick, said Hamilton at the post-race press conferences. It wasn't all good for Mercedes, however, as George Russell had to retire from the race after hitting the wall. Having initially thought that his contact with the barriers was race-ending, Russell had produced a fine recovery drive to get up to 8th before having to retire on lap 55 with a brake problem. A silly error from George, and the Mercedes driver was clearly extremely distraught about it after the race. We're not really sure what's worse, retiring from the race after such an incident, or racing yourself back into the points to then have it ripped from your hands in a somewhat baffling fashion. Well, that's precisely what happened to Lando Norris, with the young British driver being nailed with a 5-second penalty for unsportsmanlike behaviour. What exactly was the unsportsmanlike behaviour, I hear you ask? Explaining their decision, the stewards wrote, "The stewards reviewed positioning and marshalling system data, video, timing, telemetry, team radio, and in-car video evidence. During the safety car period, the driver slowed to allow a gap to form between him and his teammate in car 81. In doing so, he delayed the cars behind him. There was a significant difference in the speed between car 4 and car 81 between turns 10 and 13, approximately by 50 km per hour. Article 12.2.1.I of the ISC refers to any infringement of the principles of fairness in competition, behavior in an unsportsmanlike manner, or attempt to influence the results of a competition in any way that is contrary to sporting ethics." God, I nearly fell asleep reading that. In simple man's terms, the stewards took an issue with what they perceived as Norris slowing down to an unnecessary level in order to create enough of a gap between him and his teammate Oscar Piastri so that he would not lose time by having to have his pit stop immediately after his teammates. This is essentially known as a double stack and is rather clever if you don't get caught, but it looks like the McLaren man may have been caught out this time. As you can imagine, Lando Norris was not at all impressed by the decision. He was racing Esteban Ocon right up to the line, and Norris revealed that his team had not informed him of his penalty while the race was going on, so he was hit with an unwelcome surprise when he realized that he came away from the Canadian Grand Prix with no points whatsoever. "It doesn't make sense to me," Norris told Sky Sports F1 when asked about the penalty. "I was, 3 seconds, 4 seconds behind my delta, which everyone quite often is. It was too early to box from what we were planning to do, so I wasn't planning to box in the first place, and then I got a call just before the pit entry. So, surprised. I just didn't know about the penalty. The guys didn't tell me until just now." We can't tell if Norris was trying to double stack the McLarens or if he really did slow down because of the safety car. Still, the onboard footage of Norris certainly doesn't help, as post-race, Norris claimed that he did not back up, but onboard video footage of the McLaren shows him dropping back until the delta time increases to open up a gap to Piastri, with the British driver saying that if the offence was worth a penalty, then he should have received a similar one for the past 3 seasons. Indeed, if McLaren felt they had a case, they would have challenged the penalty, so there must have been something going on in the background, or possibly the McLarens just thought they had no leg to defend themselves on in order to get the penalty overturned. I guess it could have been worse, and Lando could have retired from the race due to a crash or another reason, such as George Russell having to retire. I don't know about you, but we were mightily confused as to why George had to retire from the race, in particular after his great racing to get back to the points, seemingly escaping any meaningful damage. But the real reason why he retired is a little more dangerous than we first thought. Asked if the brake issues were a result of Russell's earlier incident, Wolff told media, including RacingNews365.com, "The oxidation matrices were high on both cars, but after he hit the wall, interestingly the oxidation matrix went up dramatically on his left, and at that stage, we felt we couldn't finish the race, so we retired the car."